What is going on, FA Nation? Happy Friday, and welcome to the end of the work week, and welcome to the NBA DFS Live here at Fantasy Alarm. I am James Grande, joined by John Impemba. John, big 10-game slate on tap for us to end the work week. You are the man in the playbook. You have the fast break coming out right now. How you doing, and how you feeling about it?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I wish we had more injury news resolved. Obviously, there's still an hour to lock, waiting on guys like Evan Fournier, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. I'm sure there's more than I'm not thinking of at the moment. But again, as these things break, we just got the Kyle Lowry out of nowhere ruled out. We're still, I think at this point we would have found out already. But the Nets played the Sixers last night. The Sixers had their whole COVID issue. Is that Memphis Nets game going to play if there's some sort of contact tracing? Again, an hour before tip, I feel like we would have known already, but that's still to me a little bit up in the air. So there's a lot of things still unsettled for a slate that has 10 games.
Yeah, De'Aaron Fox and Christian Wood were two of the names that you were looking for. For current questionable tags. John and I profiled guys to look at on the podcast last night. John has them in the playbook, and I also have some options in the value vault. So we have plenty of options to turn to with those guys out. Just a couple notable totals here and over-under spreads that we're looking at. Washington, Boston opened at 234.5. We're up to 237.5 with Russell Westbrook in. Everyone should be good there, except all of the Boston big men. Fire up your Daniel Tice shares tonight. Utah, Milwaukee, I think you and I found this kind of interesting last night. It's a 231.5 total. Milwaukee at home, John, only 5.5 is the spread, which, last time we saw Utah, they lost a back-to-back to the Knicks and the Nets, who were without Kevin Durant. So interesting that it's only 5.5 there. Some others, Houston, Orlando is down to 221.5 with the news that Aaron Gordon won't play. Clippers, Golden State, 229.5. Toronto, Sacramento, 223. Toronto still favored in that game, even with Kyle Lowry out. But John, 10 games, a lot of things to cover. Ready to hop into the plays?
Yeah, let's do it.
And starting us off at the point guard position, per usual, as we go position by position, Russell Westbrook is the highest priced point guard on the slate. And I touched upon it as kind of a lead into this play. This is the highest spread, the highest game total on the slate. What's your interest level in Russ, and in which format are you going to deploy him in?
I think you can play him all formats. He's a triple-double machine. You want to talk about the Celtics and their tough front court, or backcourt rather, with Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown. Yeah, they can certainly give him some hassles. But for me, the biggest thing is that there's no rim protection in Boston right now. Daniel Tice, an undersized center. He's an okay shot blocker for his size, but I don't think anybody's really going to stop Russell Westbrook from getting into the paint, getting to the rim here tonight. There is no Robert Williams to block shots. Tristan Thompson even can block some shots. So he's an all-format play for me. Like you said, 237.5 game total. One of the few guys I think worth spending up for tonight. And definitely on DraftKings, you get those bonuses for the triple-doubles.
Moving down the point guard list, we have John Wall, who I think is an interesting tournament play, especially if Christian Wood sits. He's been dynamite without Christian Wood this year. But then we have the Ball brothers matching up against each other. And I think this is going to be a fun little sibling rivalry. Shout out. I wonder if LeVar is going to be in the crowd. Shout out to him. What's your take on, both Balls here? You have LaMelo in the playbook. You don't have Lonzo in the playbook. Looks like you're leaning LaMelo's way, at least in tournaments.
Yeah, it's not that I don't like Lonzo. I just feel like there's more, there's higher usage players around him. And that's not to say that with Charlotte, there isn't a Terry Rozier or Gordon Hayward, guys that do have a lot of usage. But LaMelo comes off the bench and is generally not playing with all of that core, where Lonzo starts and plays with an Ingram and a Zion and Bledsoe and that group. And we've seen LaMelo, at least, in his ability to manage the floor with that second unit, or not necessarily with the entire starting group, be able to fill up the stat sheet. He definitely gets his shots, rebounds, gets assists, and steals. The one caveat I put into the playbook about him is if you look at the minutes that LaMelo is playing, he's getting over 30 minutes in games that were blowouts. Then we saw a close game the other night. He still got his fantasy points. I think he had 39 DraftKings points or something like that near it, but only 23 minutes played in more of a closer game. So, that's something certainly to watch here as we move forward. Does LaMelo continue to maybe play more than a Devonte Graham, who's shooting, I think, 20% from the floor on the season, and overtake him as the point guard? How does that rotation fully flesh itself out? So, I definitely like LaMelo, the upside that he brings. I think he's the better shooter. Dan Lonzo, they're priced equally. Right now, I'll just go with the hotter play and go with LaMelo.
We do officially have Devonte Graham in the starting lineup, so we'll have to wait on LaMelo starting at least another day.
And you know what? Listen, I've talked about it how many times in the podcast, playbooks, chat, you name it. I like Devonte Graham. He is not a 20% shooter. The guy, he wasn't a great shooter. He only shot 38% last year, but he's not a 20% shooter. And there are nights where he's still giving us 30-plus fantasy points while going 2 for 12 from the field. One of these nights, he's going to pop off and give us a full double-digit assists, some steals, and go 5 for 11 from the floor. He's going to give you 50. He's always been my ultimate GPP play, and finally on DraftKings especially, where you get the bonus points for the three-pointers, the price continues to tank. So we're getting into a territory where I think Graham's going to start being in my GPP lineups every night.
5,100 on FanDuel, John. Don't get too excited. Moving down the point guard value list, we have the likes of Marcus Smart and Cole Anthony, two guys that obviously, one, plays for your Celtics in the best spot on the board, and two, Cole Anthony has been your darling to begin this year in this rookie class. Talk to us about both those guys, because I think they're both firmly in play, probably in most formats, maybe Anthony more a tournament play.
Yeah, I think Anthony's more of a tournament play. I think you can play Smart all around. I mean, he's starting. He's settled into that role again where he's giving you, low to mid-30s in fantasy point production. If some of those additional three-point shots drop, then, he'll get additional points added to him there. I'm going to be curious to see what the starting lineup is tonight. Again, Boston missing all of those bigs. This could be a traditional time where they go Tice, Tatum at power forward, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and Jeff Teague is active tonight. Could see Teague starting. Then you have Smart in that traditional shooting guard position that he's used to. Maybe he gets up more shots in that spot than being the point guard where he's more of the ball handler. So I like Smart in all formats. I like Anthony more as a GPP play. Again, we're expecting him to be in the starting lineup. We're waiting on that Evan Fournier news because we have seen Fournier sort of take over that point forward role at times in the past. That could be a spot where they use him again tonight. But Anthony, has been playing a lot of minutes, played over 30 the other night. His usage rate's high. I think it was 23% when he's on the floor this season. A really good matchup for him against Houston, who's allowing the 6th most fantasy points to the point guard position. So, a lot of good things are going Anthony's way. He, too, has been a volume shooter, but an inefficient volume shooter. So you're really hoping he's on the floor for the 30 minutes to get the most out of him.
Let's shift over to shooting guard, where I think that it's arguably the best position on the board tonight, and it only got better recently when Kyle Lowry was ruled out, because that means we're going to get Fred VanVleet running the show tonight, John. Right. And I don't suspect his ownership to remain under 10% on both FanDuel and DraftKings, but he's kind of you have him listed as a GPP play, and obviously that was prior to Lowry news. You have to believe that VanVleet is now a lock and load in all formats.
I do, yeah, for sure. He's a lock and load in all formats. It's a great spot against Sacramento, regardless, really. Right. Of the matchup. Now, De'Aaron Fox has been one of the worst defenders at the point guard position, basically since he's entered the league. If Fox is ruled out, Halliburton is a little bit more lankier. He's a longer player, but he's still a rookie, and VanVleet is capable of really, with his quickness, getting to the hole if he needs to. He's really good at free throws, can hit from the outside. So, I'm not really shying away. If they do decide to move maybe Corey Joseph into the starting lineup and keep Halliburton at the 2, Joseph's a little bit of a better defender. Has quickness as well that can stay with VanVleet. But again, ultimately, we saw last year at times when Toronto was just decimated by injuries, VanVleet was taking like 25 shots a night. Like he was playing 40 minutes. him and Siakam were taking all the shots. So I think Van Vliet's in a smash spot tonight. Really good opportunity to get yourself some of that late night hammer action too with Van Vliet.
Yeah, and you talk about tough matchups. I mean, he was against Marcus Smart a couple nights ago, went for 35 actual in a slow-paced game against the Pelicans, 27 actual, both those games, 50 fantasy points. So no stranger to success in tough matchups. But flipping back up top above Van Vliet, we do have a couple names in Bradley Beal, who's coming off a career-high 60 actual points. In that Washington-Boston environment, obviously his price has skyrocketed because of it. And then we have Paul George and Zach LaVine, and I'll even throw Jaylen Brown in the equation. Like, how do you assess that top tier? Because I find, at least on DraftKings, I find myself just gravitating to Van Vliet, saving the couple $100, even over $1,000. But if you aren't playing Van Vliet, or if you want to play two of these guys like you do on FanDuel, who would you pick from this top tier as kind of your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're dead on about Van Vliet. I think at this point he's just an auto lock and load. It's one of those situations where you don't want to be on the wrong side of good chalk, we like to say. Like there's good chalk, there's bad chalk. Van Vliet in this matchup would be very good chalk. So you want him in your lineup at a discounted price, generally based off what his value would have been if you knew ahead of time that Lowry was going to be out. He'd probably be more expensive. So you're going to hammer that one. I love Paul George just in general. I have him listed as a cash game play, but he's an all-around guy for me. He's been performing really well. We just saw him in this matchup go for 40 fantasy points. He's given us a handful of 50 fantasy point outputs, and that's even with Kawhi Leonard next to him. So those two guys obviously make a lot of sense, and they're sort of bookended by, Bradley Beal at the top coming off 60 fantasy points. You mentioned, or 60 real points rather. You mentioned a 237 game total. Really hard not to love that. Then on the flip side, Jaylen Brown himself coming off a 50 fantasy point game. Him and Jason Tatum are really kind of back and forthing. Who's going to be the one to pop off on a given night? But this is the highest game total they've been a part of this year. Could very easily be them both.
We're going right back to the well with Karis LeVert, right?
Yeah, as long as they're in there. I mean, it makes no sense not to, especially over on FanDuel. He's under 7K. You got to lock and load him in. I mean, yeah, he's a little bit more expensive, $7,400 over on DraftKings. It is the second night of a back-to-back. Like maybe that bothers you a little bit, but 50 fantasy points last night, 22, 7, and 10 in 32 minutes. This is exactly what we saw out of him in the bubble when there was no Kyrie Irving and Spencer Dinwiddie and all those guys were ruled out. So as long as he's active, I find it very hard not to gravitate towards him. Again, the only reason to fade would be you're a little bit worried about that back-to-back.
And he took 25 shots and only made 9 and went for 50. So imagine some of those shots fall. You mentioned one of our favorite value plays, at least potential value plays on the podcast, and Tyrese Halliburton checking in at a tremendous ownership if you like to play that ownership game on a 10-game slate, under 2%. And then Norman Powell, who was definitely going to be
he might be the highest owned player on the slate now.
Yeah,
I think Norman Powell could be the highest owned player on the slate.
How do you avoid him under 4K? Now, let's just say he has not looked anything like last year's version of Norman Powell at all, but he's still under 4K across the board, and we saw him in a spot start last week put up numbers, and he was in every winning lineup because, he's under 4K and he can score the basketball.
Yeah, he put 29 fantasy points against the Knicks when they ruled out Siakam in that game. And, he played 26 minutes against Phoenix, the other night, had 18 fantasy points. So he's in the rotation. And I like it more so that it's Lowry that's out, I think, in this situation because it's a ball handler that's off the floor. Where Van Vliet's still going to handle the ball, but now you have Powell playing a shooting guard, not really a small forward. Like there's an opportunity, I think, for him in that backcourt to control the ball a little bit more. So, but again, under $4,000 on both sites. He gives you a little bit of everything too. Like he can shoot threes, he can get you steals. Like no matter what site you want to play on, like he can help you out there. So, on a 10-game slate that was already kind of void of some serious value, unless you want to go to someone like a James Ennis that I have in the playbook tonight. It was $3,000 on DraftKings, and you're like not really sure what his role even is going to be. He just came back the other game, 16 minutes, but they're so decimated at that forward spot. Like I think people are going to be looking at him. I'd rather play Norman Powell than James Ennis And I think for that reason, Powell could be one of the more higher owned players of the entire night.
I agree, and James Ennis is a small forward, so why don't we shift our focus there, where we have LeBron, and obviously the question mark surrounding him, will he play? We have a back-to-back situation. They're going against the Bulls, who have looked better lately, but it's still not a game the Lakers, I think, fear too much. John, just let's play the guessing game. Do you think LeBron suits up tonight? It's a 10 p.m. game. Christian Wood officially ruled in tonight for the Houston Rockets. But back to LeBron.
Your cousin shares are no more.
So. Cousin shares are no more. Absolutely. And our Christian Wood shares are perfectly fine at 7,900. I think that it's not a tough matchup in an up tempo game for Houston. Weird to say because the Magic have been playing so fast. But do you suspect LeBron plays, or do you think he sits here?
I mean, you feel like he's due to sit, right? Like he was someone that was so upset about the season's quick turnaround, and yet he hasn't missed a game yet. So
I know.
I would feel like tonight again would be a game where he would sit. I would feel that way about Anthony Davis as well, given what they're both dealing with. I don't know. I felt like he would have sat last night too. Second night of a back-to-back, sure. Let's go with him being ruled out. Obviously, if he does, that opens up just a ton of other guys on the entire slate to play. I said this to you in our chat earlier today. If you want to bank on maybe AD or LeBron, one of them sitting, like leave open your utility spot, leave open some spots where you can late swap and get some guys in there like a Kyle Kuzma, like a Montrezl Harrell, Dennis Schroeder, like all those guys at 10 p.m. And we're sort of fortunate that there's 3 10 p.m. games tonight, so you can get a little creative with your lineup if you wanted to as well. And, really allow yourself some flexibility because there's some guys in all 3 of those games that you can pivot to high price, low price, and still get yourself a pretty strong lineup.
It's a great point. And not a nationally televised game for the record. And we've been talking about it. LeBron wants to play on nationally televised games. Not nationally televised tonight. So just something to keep in mind. I think you and I couldn't have been gushing more about the next 2 names on this small forward list in Jason Tatum and Brandon Ingram both. Yeah. Tatum, I think for me, checks in as my favorite play of the slate, at least my favorite spend up. And Ingram is a close second or third. Where do they rank for you in terms of spends on tonight's slate?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I love Jason Tatum for the same reason I think everyone's going to be on him tonight. It's a 237 game total. We've seen him absolutely explode recently. We know that Boston's really lacking depth in their front court, so double-digit rebounds is definitely in play for him, I think, in this game as well. He's given us some blocks lately. He's giving us steals. He had 40 actual points the other day. He's shooting 45% from 3 on the year. Like, everything that you're expecting out of Jason Tatum to become that next level superstar we've seen so far this season. He's averaging 20 shots per game. His usage percentage is near 30%. Like, you put it on paper, what you're looking for in a superstar. Jason Tatum's pretty much giving it to you this year. And now he has a really good matchup against Washington in a game we expect a ton of points to be in. So, it's hard to want to fade him. But on the flip side of that, you mentioned, Brandon Ingram's a little bit cheaper, and you're getting a lot of the same production out of Brandon Ingram, like 40 to 50 fantasy points a night. He's giving you 25 actual. He's giving you some blocks upside. He's flashed some steals. He's giving you more assists. We've seen him with rebounds. He's also shooting, 37% from 3, 46% from field. So, like, a lot of great things out of Brandon Ingram as well. It's just we're seeing, I guess, more, boom potential out of Tatum in some of these matchups than with Ingram. And, again, not to take anything away from Ingram, we've seen him go for 50 plus 3 times, including his 60 burger already, or 60 steak already this year. So, again, not to take away from him, but I just love the matchup better for Tatum here in that game against Washington.
It's a good assessment. It's a great assessment. Let's move down to the value tier where you have mentioned James Ennis is viable and We still do not have Evan Fournier news. That game is
Right.
at 8 p.m., so it isn't required by the NBA and by the teams to get in by at least 7:30. So that we might not know. Joe Harris coming off a big game, now projected to be highly owned. Second night of a back-to-back, though. Glenn Robinson is an interesting name, John, and it's a good matchup. And I just, why don't you just kind of give us a quick your quick thoughts on Glenn Robinson, because not a name that I think a lot of people are thinking of, but someone who's kind of snuck his way into the rotation lately.
Yeah, again, just desperate for value, right? On a big slate like this, if you're trying to get any sort of a semblance of potential upside here. And Robinson, the last 3 games that we've seen from Sacramento, 21, 19, and 24 minutes. Is it a lot? No, it's not a lot. But if they're without certain players tonight, if Fox ends up being ruled out and they have to go Halliburton at point guard, maybe Hield plays more of the shooting guard, and then that opens up Robinson for more time at small forward. If Bagley ends up being more limited in this game than he was in the last game when he played 29 minutes, maybe it moves Barnes more to power forward. Like, there's a whole bunch of different things that could happen here. And just seeing Robinson slowly start to creep up in his minutes there. Dart throw, I'm not saying like, hey, this is your core punt play at small forward. If you're multi-entering GDPs and you want to go stars and scrubs, like really stars and scrubs, I mean, he's $3,300 on DraftKings and he hits threes. Like, that's what his job is to do out there. So 2 of those games he took 7 shots, which means the volume's there for a guy that's only playing 20 minutes. You got to like that. And if he can fall into a rebound or 2 and maybe an assist or 2, like, yeah, he can get you there. Again, 21 fantasy points in 24 minutes against Chicago. And now you have Toronto, who does not defend wing players very well. So total dart throw, again, I'm not trying to stake my name to him, but I thought for value on this slate, you have to, pay attention and look for these things. This is how we basically discovered Vanderbilt last night. Looking for guys that are getting minutes in rotations and they're cheap. And all of a sudden we're like, hey, you know what? This guy found his way into some playing time lately. Let's see what's to make of it. And Robinson sort of fits that mold as well.
He sure does. He sure does. And speaking of people who are playing their way into more minutes, and I know I'm skipping around, but I wanted to talk about him, and that's Marvin Bagley. And I'm skipping the list a little bit, John, because under 3% projected ownership on Marvin Bagley, who's coming off a season high in minutes, a season high in pretty much everything we can name, and now he's getting a pretty decent matchup against a Toronto front court that's been bad. It's a good pace game. It's a good total. I mean, what am I missing here against the 25th worst defense against power forwards? Are we crazy to love Marvin Bagley tonight?
I don't think crazy, but I mean, obviously it's really dependent on like why did he play 29 minutes the other night? Where did that come from? Are we going to be able to expect him to continue to play that level of minutes? Because if it is, then we're all in. We were huge Marvin Bagley guys last year. Then he gets hurt, plays 16 games, kind of really, ruined his progression. But we saw it at the end of his rookie year when he was given that run that he was able to really put up big double numbers. Then, no surprise, he plays 29 minutes against a bad Chicago team, and he goes for 46 fantasy points, 21 and 12. If it's the same situation now where we can trust him that he's going to play maybe instead of 22 to 25, he's going to play 25 to 30, and that's closer to 30, then, we're getting him at a bargain price at 5,900 against, a Toronto team where, you mentioned, or I mentioned before, and we've had this discussion, they're struggling against power forwards, against centers, against small forwards this year. And I think a lot of that has to do with they're missing that rim protection from Serge Ibaka or Marcus Gasol, who are able to help out a little bit there. Siakam, I felt was a little bit of an overrated defender. Anunoby is okay, but clearly he hasn't been able to answer all the questions. And then Chris Boucher or Boucher, however we're going to pronounce that last name there, he's more of a sellout shot blocker than a defender than anything. So yeah, this is a great spot for Bagley if we believe the minutes are there.
Let's just circle back up to the top where we have Giannis. Do you feel this is a Giannis night, John? At 11-2 on FanDuel, 10-9 on DraftKings. I just can't get past that this game is only 5.5 in Milwaukee. I just can't. I don't buy that.
Here's the struggle that I've had, right, is that I love a lot of the guys in the 8 and 9K range as well.
Right.
And I can't fit them all by also playing Giannis, even with the dirtiest of values in that lineup, right? But, I mean, listen, I have largely avoided playing Giannis this season because the point spreads in some of these games are just so astronomical. You know, we're seeing double-digit point spreads a lot of the nights here for
Right.
Milwaukee, and it's been up and down with him. You know, he only played 28 minutes in this last game against Detroit, 40 fantasy points. Well, if you're paying $11,000 for him, 40 fantasy points isn't going to cut it. The game before that against Detroit was also a double-digit point spread. For whatever reason, Detroit was able to hang around a little bit longer. He played 36 minutes and he gave you 61. Right. You know, there are games this season where he's played 20 minutes and given you 30 fantasy points. There are games this season where he's played 35 minutes and giving you 60. It's picking and choosing which game you think is going to be more competitive in and which ones he can go over for you. So this is a game where we're seeing a 5-point spread. This means this is a game where we're thinking Giannis is going to play 30 to 35 minutes, which means 60 to 70 fantasy points is in play here. So I have a hard time not playing him. I think for me, it's Westbrook and Giannis, the top two guys in the slate. I mentioned in the playbook, I'm not really actually, I didn't even leave him in the playbook. I didn't put him in there, I don't think. Did I put Harden in the playbook? I forget. We talked about it on the podcast.
You did not.
I'm not interested in playing James Harden for $11,000 right now when Christian Wood's back, John Wall's there, Gordon's there, Cousins is there. I don't think it's a coincidence that we've seen back-to-back games where he's got 40 fantasy points in both. He's not taken 35 shots. He's taken 17 and 14. There's just other guys on the floor now that can shoot. We've seen double-digit assists out of Harden because he's passing to those guys. So I'm out on the Harden here. I'd rather pay for Westbrook or Giannis.
And I agree. Some other guys you have here at power forward, Julius Randle has been incredible. The price tag is obviously tough to stomach, but when you factor in that he's putting up 50-plus fantasy points a night, you could definitely do it. Game environment is probably the one downside there. Anthony Davis, it's the same kind of situation. We're waiting on LeBron. We're waiting on Anthony Davis news. We won't have it until 10. There is tremendous value, especially on FanDuel, if these guys sit. Everyone on this Lakers team is underpriced. Montrezl Harrell is 5'3". Kyle Kuzma's 4'1". Your boy Dennis Schroeder is 5'3". THT is min salary. So tremendous value if the Lakers sit Davis and LeBron. Any interest in playing Davis in a tournament? I mean, you could literally just, like you said, there's 3 late night hammers. You could pivot off Davis and kind of restructure your whole lineup and still fit everything in comfortably.
So here's the thing: is I actually think you can put some of these guys in your lineup now, anyways, because they've been playing minutes. You know, and I think this is also a bit contingent on Caldwell Pope, right? Like Caldwell Pope has been out, so Kuzma's been in the starting lineup. He's playing 30 minutes regardless. Horton Tucker, 20 minutes, 22 minutes, 24 minutes the last 3 games there. And he's been productive off the bench in his increased role because KCP is not there. Now, like you said, those guys get ruled out. It increases all of their upside as well if they get ruled in. And this is the problem that I kind of have here. If you lock in value that's playing at 10 o'clock and for whatever reason that value is no longer valuable to you, you know, like if you lock in Horton Tucker thinking he's playing whatever, and then KCP is in, Davis is in, and LeBron's in, well, now you have a guy at $3,500 with no one really to pivot to. So it's better to have late expensive guys available to pivot off of than value to pivot off of, because if you don't have salary available, you can't do much to it. But you know, that said, you know, I'm still comfortable with a Kyle Kuzma. I think if you wanted to go in that direction, you know, because he does have a role. Dennis Schroeder as well, even though struggling of late, like he has a role on this roster. You can rely on him to at least play. So those guys I'm okay with, and then it's just a bonus if those guys end up being ruled out because you were able to build your lineups, you know, accounting for that value and get some higher price plays in there previously.
Let's finish this off at center as we quickly approach 6:30. Nikola Vucevic could be a man by himself on an island tonight. We already know there's no Markelle Fultz for the rest of the year. We know Aaron Gordon's been ruled out. There hasn't been John Isaac. Akike is out. I mean, this man is maybe no Evan Fournier. Do you think Orlando can keep this close enough to where Vucevic can reach his 9K? Can we get 5x out of him at $9,000?
I am not playing Vucevic tonight. You know, Houston is just at full tilt here. Like
Yeah.
I was surprised to see the point spread of what it was. I thought it would be more. I think at least like a guy like Cole Anthony's safe because blow it or not, I feel like he's gonna play. Because they lack that point guard depth and he's a rookie, and why not give him that extra run? But a guy like Vucevic, if he goes down, like Mo Bamba is probably in the game. Like if they go down 30, you're seeing the Kem Birches and Mo Bambas of the world playing minutes tonight and 20 minutes, 25 minutes of Mook. So I have him in there because he's really good, and if they're able to keep it close, it's because he's going up. So he's the top spend up at center. I don't think there's a lot of reason to spend up at center, the mid tier, and then of course the chalk value. I think tonight with Daniel Tice is where a lot of people will be going.
Yeah, and some of those mid-tier plays include Rashawn Holmes, who's had 2 of his last 3 games blow up, taken off the injury report, so he should be good to go tonight against Aaron Baines, who won't really present him much in terms of foul trouble, which we worry about with Holmes. Jonas Valanciunas' second night of a back-to-back, but the rule here at Fantasy Alarm has been attack Brooklyn Nets centers at all costs. Steven Adams, triple-double. John, how many over/under 0.5 triple-doubles for the rest of Steven Adams' career?
Under 0.5.
Under 0.5, I would as well take the under. I think both of us are kind of bullish on Thomas Bryant, and for good reason in really great game environment.
It should be. I mean, he should have the size advantage. My problem with him lately has sort of been the inconsistent shots. He only had 6 shots against Philadelphia in a game where 300 points were scored.
Right.
That's a little concerning. But the game before that, he had 12. So I understand there wasn't many shots to go around when Bradley Beal scoring 60 actual. But this is a game where he should have the ability to at least score. I like him more on FanDuel because he's cheaper than on DraftKings. On DraftKings, I'd rather just play Rashawn Holmes at 6,200. I think that's just an easier play. But I think Brian, again, 237.5 total, hard to argue with that.
And as you mentioned, Daniel Tice at the bottom. We're not playing DeMarcus Cousins anymore over 5K with Christian Wood back. That we can cross him off our player pool. But Daniel Tice currently projected as the highest owned player of the slate over on DraftKings. That was prior to the Kyle Lowry news. So we should be getting an update here soon. Pretty much a no-brainer in all formats. I mean, as cash, he is locked. He is locked into cash games. Give me out of 10 lineups, like if you're a multi-entry player, how many tournament lineups out of 10 would you fade Daniel Tice?
Fade Daniel Tice probably 2. I think he has to be like an 80%.
I agree,
so I put in the fast break last year in 11 games in which he's played at least 30 minutes. He averaged 12-9 with 1.8 blocks per game. So at 4K, that's more than enough to get you there. And this is a game, and that's just his average, right? This is a game now that has a 237.5 game total, and he's the only center on the floor for them. So, the biggest problem with Daniel Tice is his fouls per game. He's been among the league leaders in fouls per game over the last handful of years. So, maybe if or Russell Westbrook's driving, he's hacking, he gets foul trouble, and then you see Taco fall for 10 minutes. You see Semi Ojeleye out there playing small ball center. But Tice, if he can stay on the floor, he played 35 minutes at times last year. We've seen him give us double-doubles before. He can block some shots. So I think it's going to be very difficult on a big slate like this to fade a chalk value play like Tice.
I completely agree, man. I completely agree. It is 6:33. Before we get out of here, John, any final thoughts as we head to lineup lock? Evan Fournier, officially a game time decision. Not that we didn't already know that, but...
Thanks for the updates. Not really. I mean, listen, I just think you need to get your exposure to that Celtics game. Again, I think not playing Jason Tatum tonight could put you in a bind there. There is definitely some risky value. We mentioned it already. But I feel like one of those guys is going to come through for you tonight. Which one? I don't know. But I think if one of them is going to come through for you, there's, you didn't mention DeAnthony Melton. I like Melton as a cheap point guard. James Ennis, again, min price. If Fournier is ruled out, I may go James Ennis if Fournier gets ruled out. I think $3,000, that could be my value play.
And something interesting to note, Norman Powell, a small forward. on FanDuel, not a shooting guard. So just a little more thought process at small forward on FanDuel because you have Ingram, Tatum, LeBron at the top. All right, John. Big thanks to you for the playbook. All the content's out. The fast break is out. Big shout out to Matt Sells for the production of today's live stream. We will be back with live streams on Monday. We'll have full content out for Saturday, full content out for Sunday, even though there's football going on. And we'll see you guys on Monday.